Kate Cook, welcome to the first episode of The Wellness Report. Today's conversation is one I've been really looking forward to because it's something that doesn't get talked about enough, and what it means to actually feel good, and whether or not vitality really has an expiry date and what we can do, especially as women, to feel our best. Kate, just a little bit of background around you and your journey. You've been a TEDx speaker and you're an 8-time published author. You've written books on nutrition, including titles such as Positive Nutrition, Drop a Dress Size, Get Healthy for Good, and Whole Health. But what's really interesting is where your work has evolved to now. So presenting in corporate business, from banking to fashion and construction, with companies like The White Company and Pret. Through your work and courses, the community you've built, I'm really interested to see what you have to say about nutrition, health, and all things wellness. So Kate, with that, I'd love for you yourself to take me through your journey from being in clinics to working in corporate to where you are now, writing your books and all things nutrition.
Well, thank you so much for
Such a long intro.
Well, it's been a long time because it's been 25 years, actually. So it seems like I've done quite a lot, but then it's just, when you're saying it in a compressed way like that, it is quite a lot. So, so I started off actually very late because you obviously, I'm not 21 anymore, but I started relatively late in nutrition. So I had a whole career before being a nutritional therapist. I was in interior design.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Briefly, because actually I couldn't give a monkeys about people's curtains, which was probably the wrong job for me. And it was really the sort of culmination of that career, which I realized I was completely in the wrong job. I don't like curtains. And I was doing a hotel, which actually is the Turnberry Hotel, which now Mr. Trump owns, but in those days was not owned by Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
And I had to go around with my boss, who was called Jenny McLean.
Yeah.
Jenny McLean was probably about 60 and I was, 28. And I was totally and utterly and completely knackered.
Yeah.
So exhausted, which shows you that actually energy is not about age. So I was totally exhausted. And at the end of a long day, strutting down the corridors of the Turnberry Hotel, plumping the chintz, washing the curtains or whatever else we were meant to be doing, we would both just collapse into our soup at the end of the day,
Yeah.
And so there were two things that emerged at that point. I just thought, what is my life?
Yeah.
I'm 28 years old.
Yeah.
I'm totally knackered and exhausted and I'm in the wrong job. So really, apart from the feeling exhausted bit, unlike a lot of nutritionists who come to nutrition through ill health, I came to it through personal development, really, which is I just thought there just has to be a bit more to life than looking after. And I had to look after her Shih Tzu as well.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you didn't feel fulfilled from your job and you were like, what else can I do? So how did that change then? How did nutrition come into the picture from that?
Well, I started actually I started realizing that at the base of it, if you want to be potentialized, if that isn't even a word, you need to have the energy to do that. And that actually applies now at beyond 60.
Yeah.
So it applies at my age now, as it did when I was 28. Without energy, you cannot do anything. So you are, in effect, you're not your age, you're your energy.
Yeah.
That's really, it and all about it. So when you plug into that life source, when you plug into that kind of enthusiasm and kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a fountain of sort of like a fountain of life, if that's not too dramatic to say. Then what can you do with that potential? Where can you go? What can you do? Whose life can you change?
Yeah.
So I'm coming over. It's only been about 5 minutes. I'm coming over.
Getting really deep.
Getting deep already. But it was really that moment of saying, gosh, you know what? We don't really have that long on the planet.
Yeah.
Let's just make everything count.
Yeah. And you started with that in clinics.
Well, then I realized that sort of truth, I suppose. Then I
Yeah.
started reading books. And at that time, Patrick Holford was a massive thing in our industry,
Okay.
a nutritional therapist. Therapy, he founded nutritional therapy really in this country. And the only place to train at that time was ION, the oldest and the best. And so I thought, oh, I'll just do a little bit of nutrition for myself.
Yeah, like take a course.
Take a little course. And I didn't realize it was 3 years and really, really full on.
Wow.
And so I became a clinician. And then through coincidence, we were talking about earlier, but through coincidence, I had a clinic in Cavendish Square.
Okay.
And then in Harley Street.
Yeah.
And I was really busy because there were very few nutritional therapists at that time. About 235 in our main kind of professional body
Wow.
at that time.
And from that, then transitioning into writing.
Well,
books?
then it was just like, actually, the really great thing about having a clinic, and it really is, that clinical experience, is that talking about nutrition is very different from the nutritional experience and the clinical practice. And being a clinician is like being a health detective, getting to the bottom of health problems by basically putting all the pieces of the jigsaw together and then finding the answers. It's really exciting to be a practitioner, actually. And I'm quite an old-fashioned practitioner because I started so long ago, which is now there's a lot of testing involved. But in those days, it was done through absolute clinical insight. You had to know what questions to ask, the signs to look for in somebody's health, and really kind of feel your way a lot because there wasn't so much clinical testing in those days. So yes, getting that big experience then, I had about 8,500 clients.
Wow.
Because there were so few of us.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and it was just a timing thing.
It's really interesting because I feel like nowadays, and we can get into this a bit later, I feel like everyone has an opinion on nutrition and there's so many more nutritionists out there. And I feel like now more than ever, especially in the online spaces, a lot of people might necessarily call themselves a nutritionist or a specialist within food, but actually like might not have that experience or background within like working in a clinic.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things, which is I think actually in the end, you're dealing with food. So anybody who is authentically teaching people or inspiring them to a better life through better food, I mean, knock yourself out, really, because I think otherwise knowledge can become restricted and possessed and owned. And I don't know if that's the right thing. I think nowadays there is a lot of kind of fancy footwork, and including in my profession, a lot of fancy footwork around, the sort of more technical parts of being, a nutritional therapist. It is absolutely complicated and can be, but it can also be very simple. That sounds kind of probably two ends of a spectrum.
Yeah.
But it can be really simple, which is actually change your diet, adopt some better lifestyle, make sure your food is really good quality. And then perhaps actually you're able to reverse some of these conditions without the complexity. Then if it doesn't reverse, add the complexity in. But I think nowadays, sometimes the complexity can come first. Sounds like a bit of a dark art, and people can get, first of all, it can get very expensive. So you can get bogged down in the detail. Whereas that's actually, probably you can start quite simply sometimes.
So going from the clinical side of things and then now to where you are with, speaking for major corporations and also having a community of older women who you help with nutrition, but also with life is how it comes across to me as well. How did you come to building that community, and how did the corporation side of like the talks come to be as well?
Well, then actually, when I was in clinic and seeing lots of people in clinic, people would come to me and say, "Oh, would you come and talk to our company?" And in the end, it became that I didn't, because actually, I think if you're a practitioner, you are so hopefully based on ethics. You have to be entirely ethical. If you want to be wealthy, then you should have become a banker. It's not something really, you know what I mean? Meaning,
Yeah.
of course, you have to earn a living. And if
Yeah.
you don't earn a living, then of course you can't help other people.
Yeah.
You can't give them that
Yeah.
potential. But on the other hand, it's something that you have to entirely be ethical about.
Mm.
So I suppose I'm a bit black and white in many ways, which is that actually I just thought, you know what, I kept on being asked to speak in companies. And in the end, I just didn't want to move my clinic around. So say, oh, by the way, sorry, I've got a gig next Thursday. You're going to have to move,
Yeah.
It really didn't feel right for me to do that. So I sort of decided to go straight down the presenting and the corporate side. And also because I felt that that nutrition method or the nutrition message should be more widely available, because the clinical side, in a way, is quite exclusive, especially because it's in private medicine still.
Yes.
And you're having to pay for it. And it can be that one-on-one relationship with nutrition, which means that I solve, hopefully, your issues, but I don't solve more than one person's issue, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
wanted to kind of, and also because actually, I think it comes back down to that initial insight of wanting to get the potential, a life potential, as opposed to the nutrition molecules in their own right, if you know what I mean. Meaning, in clinical practice, you're looking really at the molecules of nutrition, but I'm a foodie, so
Yeah.
I'm much more about good food, good cooking, family, being entirely normal around food, as
Yeah.
opposed to sometimes when people are ill, they have to be very particular about the food they're eating, allergies or intolerances or whatever. But I thought that actually there's a sort of message there for people who you can help by just being entirely kind of like getting the basics in about
Yeah.
food first, as opposed to going down the complexity.
Yeah, for sure. And like you've worked with women for decades now as well, with, building the community and then also speaking to women that are in the corporate spaces. What's the biggest misunderstanding, do you think, that women have about their bodies from a nutrition or wellness perspective as they age?
Well, I think a big one, obviously, and an obvious one, because it's very fashionable in corporate at the moment, is the what I call the M word, the menopause. That's like the M word, because I think actually we've been, and I'm not dismissing people have very bad menopauses.
Yeah.
They do, they absolutely do, and actually, my huge compassion goes out to those ladies who really go through a terrible time, have to resort to medication or other ways of solving it. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's a one size fits all, absolutely not. But actually, we're then taught to completely and utterly and totally dread the menopause as this huge loss of something, or I don't know, that you're going to feel terrible and that you're going to go potty
Yeah.
or whatever. I mean, I went a bit potty, but I was potty already, just saying. But you don't, it doesn't have to be that way. And
Yeah.
the reason it is sometimes that way is actually, I think, is of course there's a huge transition at that time, but actually, as looking at it from a clinical perspective, you have to go back and solve the clinical problems that were already there when the menopause struck, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So actually sometimes we look at this whole global thing called the menopause when we should be going back to that much more precise clinical approach to say, so what is it with you that we're dealing with?
Yeah.
How
So
is-
that personal touch.
It's the personalized medicine, really. And so therefore it's not a universal one size fits all that you have to dread it. For me, I had one day where I was like Lady Godiva. I was thinking, blimey, O'Reilly, it's like, who has switched the heating up? And I had one day where it went bang.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's very odd. And that was the last of it,
Wow.
apart from the pottiness.
Yeah.
which obviously you could argue came before as well. So you could say I was lucky, but it could be that obviously, and certainly some nutritionists don't get an easy time either. I don't know what it was with me,
Yeah.
actually. But you don't have to dread it, is what I'm saying. Always, it's not a universal thing. And from that comes this amazing space of wisdom, clarity, energy, actually, and also a shedding of a skin like a snake, whereby you don't really have to impress anybody anymore. You just are you, and it's a totally different type of power if you're brave enough to sort of grab it.
Yeah.
I don't mean it in a using power inauthentically, of course, but it's just standing in your strength and your power and your wisdom. And actually, it's a beautiful place to be.
Oh, that's lovely. And would you say that with the energy and, the energy that you have at this point, and the energy that you encourage the older group of women that you have with that community, with Sensational at 60 in particular, the brand that you've built, is that as much as an emotional and like finding their purpose as well at that stage in their life? Would you also say that also missing foundational nutrients rather than the age itself? So how do you encourage them to really focus on that?
Well, I mean, a big part of it is the nutrition side, because as I said before, you're not your age, you're your energy. And it really applies just as it was at 28 at my age now. Actually, that the 28-year-old me who was knackered, I'm got 15 times more energy now at this age, and you can still play with that energy and still have the potential, and still you don't have to have this thing called retirement. It can be a sort of reinvention. And yes, and I think obviously a huge part of it is that nutrition side, and I think a huge part of it, again, I do have a very good diet, all organic and all of that. Don't go on holiday, but because I've got so much organic food, which obviously is expensive, I'd much rather it that way.
Yeah.
But also supplements. I do take a lot of supplements, or at least I take pinpointed supplements, and so I don't know, because the other day, sorry, I've veered off slightly from your question, but the other day I was sitting around at the sailing club, which is a very nice place, not a posh place at all. It's just sort of lino floors. And certainly I'm not a sailor, but my husband is. And everybody's sitting around sort of saying, so, oh dear, my hip, and oh, I've got a thyroid problem. And so what's wrong with you? Somebody said, oh yeah, well, I was this and that. And then I had this and I've got IBS. And then they said, so what have you got? I said, I haven't got anything. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say, really.
Yeah.
Grumpy sometimes.
And you wouldn't say that, I mean, obviously we don't want to say that's because you're taking supplements, right? And you have taken supplements, but that is a conclusion that maybe you could come to. I mean, my question to you would be, when did you start taking supplements? When did you start really, I'm guessing when you started looking into nutrition? And
yes.
What would you recommend?
Think it's actually always true, because I always ate good food. Didn't necessarily take supplements, but about, I think it was 2014, I got the most horrendous flu.
Okay.
Where it was so bad, I literally, and I, for good or for bad, I literally have never been to a doctor. So,
okay,
I'm not recommending that,
no,
folks, obviously, but that's my choice.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'd never been to a doctor. And, but I was really bad. I mean, I couldn't take a breath in without, like if I took a breath in, I couldn't then take another breath in.
Oh,
I
wow.
was, my husband said, I think you should
think
go
it's
to the
time.
doctor.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Ugh." Anyway, what I discovered was I was massively vitamin D deficient, which
Oh, wow.
obviously as a nutritionist, you probably should have known. But yeah, so then at that point, I thought, this is interesting. So obviously, as I'm getting older, I'm not getting as much nutrient kick as I should be, obviously, from just doing natural things like being in the sun to get vitamin D.
Yeah.
Because, of course, all of our lifestyles aren't the lifestyles. However, organic your lifestyle is, and you're still inside. Unless you've got a job that obviously
Yeah.
not as, you're
Yeah.
doing stuff outside, but many of us are inside. So even trying to get a good lifestyle, it's not easy, So
Yeah, 100%.
I started taking supplements then.
Okay. And did you feel after that, I mean, obviously you were really sick, so you were going to feel a change. Did you feel that change over time with the supplement taking?
I think the thing with supplements is interesting, which is obviously, of course, they're supplemental to the diet. And I think what happens is there's a slow, steady increase up the hill.
Yeah.
So you don't really usually get a massive like, toomph, wow, that's like, ding, boom, like, whoa, and off I go down, but actually I think, so you sort of increase gently up the hill.
Steadily over time.
Steadily over here at time. But also conversely, when you stop taking a supplement, it works the other way, which is you go down the hill quite steadily. And then you think, I don't feel as energetic as I used to. That's interesting. I stopped taking whatever. I stopped taking something, or I changed my routine, or something happened. But I think where I can, actually, I try. In clinic, it's very different because we are, in effect, using supplements in a way to bridge gaps in biochemistry.
Yeah.
So often by testing, but sometimes clinically, you're looking for symptoms and signs, and then you're saying, you need B vitamins or you need this. But, covering the basics like an essential fatty acid, so fish oil, making sure that, and I am a fan of Good Green Vitality as well, as you know.
Yeah.
Because it's very absorbable and it's a really nice base, and it's a food base. So that's a sort of base in the bottom. And then adding on things like magnesium and, and what else do I add on? B vitamins.
Yeah.
So I don't take that many, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
So would you say that, speaking on the essentials, Good Green Vitality by Nuzest is a good place to start in terms of checking boxes if you're looking at getting, that essential start with your nutrition, and you're like, right, I really want to try and focus here on ABC in my
because you can build on for that as well. So for example, putting collagen in and putting other stuff into something that's a base. I also find taking something that's a drink is, for me personally, because I feel like I don't want to take a lot of pills. I know nutrition is a lot of pills, and and supplements get some stick because they are chemicals. We forget that. But some, for example, B vitamins. But I find that you can almost measure it. I mean, the benefit will be positive even if it is a chemical.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be doing too much of that.
Yeah.
So I like a sort of food base, and I like to have a drink where I don't feel like I'm literally popping pills. Do you know what I mean?
100%. It feels less of a medication and more of something that's included in your diet with a powder that you can put into a drink or put into a baking recipe or something like that.
Yes, but also it's synergistic as well. So you've got lots of different, it's not just one effect, it's a synergistic effect, which, I like, I'm as you know, I'm a fan. So, but it also feels a little bit effortless. It's effortless wellness. That's it.
I love it.
On a plate. No, in a cup.
In a cup. Well, whatever you want, because you can use it within our protein powder and with GGV, the Good Green Vitality. you can put it into recipes for like granola or whatever you want to mix it with, yogurt in the mornings if you're having it with breakfast or something like that.
Right.
I don't know if you've tried that,
No, I
but
haven't
that's
tried
something
that.
that actually I've done.
Have you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's working for you.
Yeah. So has there been moments in your career or personal life where you kind of remember thinking, we're getting this stage of women's health completely wrong? And I say this because as someone who's done, a tiny bit of research compared to what you've, your knowledge is, I've realized how little women's health is researched and how little there is, insights into how our bodies work.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually it is said that a lot of drug trials are done on men and actually never done on women for a start. So I think that's really interesting. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think, do I think women's health has been under researched? I think,
Well, not necessarily under research. It was just more of you personally. Have you had a moment where you've gone, we're getting this wrong?
do you know what is interesting? Because I tend not to look at women as women, if you know what I mean. I know that sounds bizarre, but it's kind of like, in a way, it's my tribe. So Sensational at 60, the people who follow me or want to come with me, it's kind of like I didn't want to be noddy no mates, so I just wanted to form some to say, come on, girls, we can do this. Let's still live this very vibrant, meaningful life where we can really inspire people on this journey. The younger people actually who are coming up through the ranks. So generation, I'll never get that right, Z or
Gen X
or whatever. So
you've got Gen Z as well,
and Gen Alpha apparently.
Yeah, that's younger than me. So I'm technically Gen Z / millennial, and then Gen Alpha is below.
Right. Yeah. So it's this generation that we can possibly inspire by still, really kicking some ass, later in life, as opposed to sort of. I remember my grandmother, who's probably my age, she's sort of in a tartan skirt and some sensible shoes and sort of like, curly hair, you know what I mean, sweetly. But, that's not how I think I can inspire the younger generation to also be interested in food and care about food and the planet and all the rest of it. So yes, but I think women working in the workforce, it is interesting because sometimes we try and play the same game as our male counterparts. So we're really pushing the stress and pushing the hours and all the rest of it. And I think that has a couple of issues, which is, we are much more complex hormonally than our male counterparts, really, because we've got all sorts of other hormones that are playing a part in our cycles. And if you're pushing the cortisol too much, you're literally flipping hormones to not work so well. So you're getting conditions like endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome and all sorts of kind of like conditions that may or may not come from deficiencies and blood sugar imbalances and all sorts of things. But it is because it's our lifestyles are impacting on our health, obviously. So I think that's definitely the first thing that comes from that. And also, I think that, whether we like it or not, women were the people who were in the kitchen in the old days preparing the food. I know a lot of people now who have partners who are their male partners who are preparing food, and they're not interested in preparing food. Because it's almost like you don't want that role. So the kind of little almost a notice swinging on the kitchen door saying, the position for cook is vacant. And nobody really wants to fill it. And of course, good health at the foundation starts with good food. I mean, you just cannot skip that part of it. And also beyond, oh God, I'm going off all over the place as usual, but it is so interesting in corporate because in corporate often it is about the mental game. If well-being is addressed, it's often addressed from I don't know, like resilience or mental health or all of these things, without looking at the foundation cause for nearly all of, well, at least I'm not saying it's a cure, but it's at least a foundation to
Yeah.
say you have to start from a place of sound nutrition, because all of these things are contingent on that.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
would you say that to those people who are living that like fast-paced lifestyle, whether it's in corporate or they travel a lot, or, they might not be, as you said, like in the kitchen or cooking as many like meals as maybe previously people were, would you say that supplements are a good place to start,
Well, I wouldn't say it was a good place to start. I think you really do
as an
need,
addition?
as an addition. I think you've got to get that foundation in, and it for it to matter, And I think that starts with the quality of. It starts with two things. The way I teach nutrition, anyway, is first of all through blood sugar management. That's the North Star of nutrition. Is all about that one factor, and if you get that one thing, if you like, down pat, then a lot of things swing off that. So, for example, all the sort of other diets like ketogenic diets and paleo and even pegan, which is a mixture between
I've
vegan
never
and
heard of that, actually.
paleo.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter as long as that foundation there is solid, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. So you would see that good food is step one.
Yeah.
And then step two is adding things such as maybe supplements
Yeah,
that
yeah, the
can,
minerals. I
can
mean,
really build onto your life.
yeah, because of the magic of minerals. I mean,
Mm.
I sometimes call them magic minerals, almost like if you can imagine that we're like a machine, and that, there was a game that I played when I was a kid. It was probably 19th century game now called It was called Mousetrap. Do you ever remember
I
that
think
game?
I've heard of it, but I wouldn't know.
Oh, anyway, it was just a complicated sort of machine, in effect, that ran a ball down these gullies, and then in the end, this not a real mouse, but a mouse got trapped in
Yeah.
this thing. And I just imagine that our biochemistry is a bit like that.
Okay.
Obviously not,
Yes.
but it's really complicated. And
Yeah.
we're powered by nutrients, and we're powered by minerals. So, for example, zinc obviously is a mineral that lots of people have heard of, good for the immune system, good for lots of different stuff. Um, you know, creates digestive enzymes in the stomach and all the rest of it. And if you don't have those, the machine stops. So things like magnesium, it's all, you produce something called ATP, which is basically like an energy currency in
Yeah.
the cells. And if you don't have these little tiny components that make the machine go round, that's it. You
The
run out of
system
gas.
breaks.
So you've got to have food that, or be able to supplement something that will give you that the petrol, in effect, the fuel to make the engine works. And from that comes everything. It comes, that energy comes, the mental clarity comes. I just like, even, I don't know. It's
You feel
just,
like it's all interconnected.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even something bigger. I mean, I know it's fancy, but it's kind of almost like that it's like a message coming, I sound come all over all religious, but it's something like coming through you
Yeah.
to be able to, in effect, empower everybody else.
Yeah.
That's what nutrition does. It's like seeing the world. I sometimes say this. It's like seeing the world in black and white, like you've been in a black and white movie. And when you get the nutrition, you suddenly see it in color, and everything changes. The complexity of life, your relationships, everything changes through that absolute kind of power of those little micronutrients down that, the whole sort of funnel, if you like, empowering you as a person. It's
It's a
magic,
domino
in short.
effect. Yeah.
And it's a domino effect. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And speaking about, stopping or crashing, a lot of Nuzest customers, when they come to us, they will say, I get to the 3 p.m., 4 p.m. in the day and my energy crashes, or I've hit a wall at 3, 4 p.m. What do you really think is going on there underneath it all? And what kind of support would you recommend without maybe relying on something like caffeine or coffee? Because I think we've kind of touched on it already, but it's very fast paced working environment. Everything seems to be go, go, go all the time for a lot of people. And it is tempting. I'm sometimes tempted as well to, grab a coffee in that late afternoon period because you've still got work to do, or you need to go to the gym, or, for people that maybe have kids, they want to keep going for that school run, chaos. What would you say to that in terms of, having an
Well,
alternative?
it's a blood sugar crash. So that's that North Star. It's saying that the mineral magic and the North Star of nutrition, which is the blood sugar, is blood sugar management. So I would say it's nowadays it's people do fasting, like intermittent fasting, and it can actually not be so great for women. Actually, the intermittent fasting.
I did actually
Yeah.
read about that because I was looking into it, doing a 3-day fast or something. And I saw again that it was actually proven to work better in
Yeah, I can't
men.
remember the author, but there's a book which is called Fast Like a Girl.
Okay.
And that's she's an American lady. I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just to take note of. But I would say the first meal that breaks the fast, what used to be called breakfast, is the most important meal of the day. So getting that so-called right. And actually what I do, and I'm not just doing the advert here, but I might have, for example, today I had avocado, egg, and I had Nuzest as well. So
The good green vitality.
yes. Sorry, I should say good green vitality because you do a lot of other things. But
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Nuzest good green vitality, as you know. But so I will. That's what I will do. So because it'll just eat. So instead of having lots of different meals throughout the day, it's actually better to concentrate and rather than snacking, which is what we used to do in the old days. So we used to have breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. That's how we were taught blood sugar management in like 25, 30 years ago. But now it sort of seems that it's better not to trigger insulin, which is the hormone that controls that blood sugar reaction. But if you get that right, that first meal of the day, then you shouldn't have a blood sugar crash at 3 o'clock. I mean, obviously, as well, there are other issues like, for example, sleep. Which can be a huge, a huge
Factor.
factor these days, can't it? People not sleeping enough.
Yeah. So you would say if you feel like your afternoon, you're seeing those afternoon crashes, reevaluate or look at your breakfast meal and good green
Yes.
vitality, incorporating that as like a daily habit is a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you cannot get away with. I don't know. You can't get away. It doesn't matter if it's the first meal of the day, meaning you don't have to have that, at 8 o'clock in the morning or a prescribed. Do you know what I mean? Like so-called breakfast time.
Yeah.
Often I'll eat breakfast a little bit later, like 11 o'clock. So I'll be sort of just giving myself. I might stop eating at around 6 or 7, and then eat again at 11, and that suits me, especially as you get older. Excuse me, your digestion isn't working quite as efficiently.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't need as much kind of actual food. But again, important is to get the micronutrients in.
Yeah.
So that is an important aspect of it. And of course, I should have said that, it's nowadays because food, even good quality organic food, may not have the micronutrient content in it that it did, for example, like 80 years ago. So
Wow.
magnesium levels have dropped. I can't remember what it is actually off the top of my head, but it's something like 50%.
Wow.
So it's a huge dip, and actually because of the way we farm, modern farming methods, supermarkets, storing food, generally speaking, and that will impact the vitamins actually rather than the minerals. But so the way we farm food has had a mass, and the soil, which is the magic behind the minerals. So it's like alchemy. It's soil is alchemy. It turns something which is dirt into, in effect, gold, into the currency of energy, which is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, wow.
Who knew?
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Would you say, like talking about, crashes and exhaustion and all of that, brain fog seems to be quite a hot topic in terms, especially, with women. How often would you see that linked to digestion or absorption when you're having conversations with maybe other practitioners or clients in general?
As a brain fog.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that has become a huge thing. And definitely it's I just don't know where it's coming from really. I mean, meaning was it a thing even like, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago? I mean,
Yeah.
are people talking about it more?
Mm.
Perhaps it's a bit of both. Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a nutritional therapist, we would always think that good health starts with good digestion. I mean, that's just where it starts. Everything starts.
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, if you look up on the internet and you see it says bliss begins in the bowel, which was what was Confucius. I thought was what Confucius said. But apparently, when you look it up, it says that I said that he said that. So I'm not sure if that really counts. But anyway, if he did say that, then he's got something going for him there, because it definitely, bliss begins in the bowels. So you have to start with that, absorbency starts there, everything starts from there.
Yeah.
So it would seem that that brain fog, which has a huge connection with your brain, obviously it's called the second brain, as you know. And I do think it's just, again, the magical way that your gut will talk to your brain through photons of light, which I just find incredible. So it's communicating in light, to your brain. So yeah, so it's a very complex system as well, and probably very or misunderstood. But we can have things like overgrowth in the bowel. So,
Okay.
for example, if you've got the wrong diet, you're eating too much sugar, you may have perhaps you've had an operation, you've got not enough friendly bacteria, you're not digesting well, lifestyle and all the rest of it. Then brain fog will be the outcome of that. Absolutely.
So you would say that it does start with digestion and looking at what you're intaking as well.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. I mean, I think if you go to a nutritional therapist or go to a nutritionist, they may be able to more get to the bottom of why it's affecting you, but it will definitely be your digestive system, and probably overgrowth of factors and, elements that are not agreeing with you. Like, for example, Candida, which is a yeast infection.
Okay.
So you can easily see if you've got that yourself by going to the mirror, looking at the mirror, and then poking your tongue out and seeing if you've got a white coating on your tongue.
Okay, wow,
So,
interesting. That kind of brings me to another question that I had with, in this day and age of social media, where it seems there is so many different wellness takes, and you should have this, or you should have this, or if you do this, then and you saying you can check if you have a yeast infection by going to the mirror. What have you seen that you disagree with in terms of maybe a fad online or a trend? And what have you seen that you're like, no, this is legit, this is scientifically proven? I can give you some examples if you want. A lot of people now are talking more about protein intake and reaching their protein goals. It seems to definitely, I'm being pushed it on my algorithm. How much do you agree with that? Or have you seen anything where you're just like, no, this is rubbish?
well, do you know what? It's really interesting because is it interesting? I think it's interesting because I said before I'm a foodie. So I really try and bring people back to, and again, actually, sorry, what is normal. So it's I was just about to say, to sort of like eating like normally, whatever that means. But then what is normal? So that's a thing. So meaning, I mean, it has to start back from there, which is to do with lifestyle and to do with time and to do with values and importance and all the rest of it. And I think what we can do, especially in the West, is be so hyper focused on ourselves that it becomes this actual sort of like narcissism where all the time you're worried about this, that, and the other, how much you're sleeping, how much you've tracked yourself on your flipping watch, and I've got clients like that who basically are so flipping paranoid and so tense
Yes.
that actually it's undoing every bit of well-being fad that they're on because, especially, I won't name the thing, but there was recently a trend, wasn't there, of a device and then it's checking your insulin every 3 minutes. This woman was literally like, I've got to check my insulin. I was like, blimey, what you need to do is chill out, babe.
Yeah.
She was completely manic.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's like, actually, what is the food doing for you in effect? Wouldn't it be lovely if you I know it's not always possible. And I know people have busy lifestyles, but it's actually that sort of prioritization of saying, how can I help you? How can I come round to my house? Let's have a big meal. Let's have a big laugh. Let's enjoy this gift, and instead of it being like, so what's this protein doing for me? How much is this doing? I don't know. And I'm a quirky. So, obviously I see there's a place for that. It's not a criticism, anybody's lifestyle, because, knock yourself out. If that's working for you, carry on. But for
some
me,
people might be too hyper focused on certain things.
But also you can get this thing, and it's pretty well known, called orthorexia, and where you're so absolutely correct about the diet, it becomes an obsession. And actually, there's a bigger world out there outside all of that kind of, noise. And actually, sitting down and doing some of the most simple things, winding back, which is, getting to bed at a reasonable time, in it sort of, just sleeping well, getting up
doing
happy.
the basics.
Yeah. Doing the basics.
Yeah. I feel like obviously it's great that wellness has become such a popular topic, especially with my generation. Like, it's been great to see that a lot of people have become very wellness focused. But I do think that there is, maybe a danger of it going too far. And I do think, like you said, like balance is key. And if you're doing the basics right, then that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I think it is like, and I was hinting at it really, is not so much what I can do for the food, but what, what can I do for the food, not what the food can do for me. Do you know what I mean? That sort of actually, I don't know, it's just having a wider perspective, because I think, again, through social media and the way that we're everything's moving so quickly, we're so hyper focused. Definitely we want the next thing that will increase longevity, the fountain of youth or whatever. And that's been an age-old, problem and an age-old quest. But in the end, how can we kind of extend the love to somebody else, or without it always being about us, actually? Because in a way it is about us being well, because without that well-being, you can't extend that sort of compassion, love, bigger themes outside ourselves. Does that, again, we got into this pretty quickly, into the deep stuff.
Start talking about supplements and now we're talking about meaning of life.
Yeah.
Okay. So for any women watching right now who want to take action straight away, what would your top 5 daily non-negotiables be for supporting energy, focus, gut health, without, overhauling their entire life where it becomes a hassle, kind of what we were speaking about before, in terms of, it doesn't have to be this like major hyperfixation. What would those be?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, the non-negotiables has to be the breaking of the fast. That's what I was saying before, which is the balancing of the blood sugar has to be completely priority. I suppose the quality of the food has to be, again, another non-negotiable, because of the quality that you might be getting from that.
Yeah.
Cooking it yourself. So again, there's no such thing as healthy convenience food. So that it does have to, even if you're not cooking it, but you're constructing it, meaning you're chopping something up, or you've got a real something, real egg, and you're making it into something. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be fancy cordon bleu curry kind of stuff.
No.
But also I think sleep has to be priority. For me, that is definitely taking magnesium at night. So that is one of my non-negotiables. Making sure that you get your mineral magic in there. So your minerals are the most important thing, I would say. For me, as we've discussed, that's my Good Green Vitality shot, which is absolutely a non-negotiable. And it's like a base thing. How many was that? Was that 4?
I think that's 5.
Oh, it's 5.
Yeah, that was
Okay,
5.
cool.
Speaking more about gut health, because that has been, again, a trendier topic that's been coming up more. Do you want to just touch base on the gut and how it relates to maybe hormones, brain, all of the above, within how much you would prioritize that within your...
Yeah, and again, I probably, of course, obviously I said that Confucius apparently said that I said that he said that bliss begins in the bowels. So, it's really, really important. But on the other hand as well, we shouldn't look at the gut as anything separate from us. So there are, again, it runs in trends with people who write a book usually, who, that you're able to have a book that you're able to kind of call it the gut fix or something, but it's an incredibly important part of you. So it shouldn't be seen as separate. So that's the first thing to say. But of course, the gut is not just the tubes that kind of like, the obvious thing you might think of the gut, like where the microbiome is and, your friendly bacteria. It's everything from the top to the bottom. So it's things like also your liver, things like the liver, the kidneys, everything that works in effect clear. And that's where the hormones come in, very importantly, which is your hormones are being cleared through the liver. And so, these days as well, where we live in a more toxic world, things are more difficult to clear. So through the liver, for example. So you need to make sure the liver is working very well. And actually, this is where the testing and complexity does come in. And if you're interested, which is for me, I've done some of the genetic testing that shows that I don't clear some of the hormones, or I don't clear some of the pathways through the liver as well as the next person.
Okay,
so therefore, I know that I should take care of my liver by taking things like milk thistle, or I take NAC. So helping that component of my liver work better, for example. So that's where sometimes the fancy footwork of supplementation can come in.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you've mentioned specific ingredients, because actually on the Nuzest website, you can go in and see exactly what's in the products. And I think that's a really handy feature in terms of if there's people that need certain ingredients, or like, for example, you said milk thistle or something like that, you can actually see on the website what that does and what it's included. And I think that's a really handy feature.
Yeah, but also I think that it's the synergistic properties of the products working together. And that's how food much more works in a synergy, as opposed to, when we look at supplementation. And so supplementation generally can be helpful. But we're looking at them as isolates usually, so the isolated product. Whereas if you're looking at more a food source space, then food has components that we don't probably even know how it works. Still, we don't know how it works, even though we know how components of it work. So the synergy of food is very important. And that's why supplementation should always be supplemental, because the magic of the food is something else, So even they can measure in food, they can measure, apparently, again, I haven't tested this at home, but they can measure the energy of the food. So it's not just about the actual sort of, what do you call it, like the sort of molecules of it. It's actually how it's measured in terms of energetically. I mean, I haven't really gone into that side.
That's so interesting. I had no idea that was like even possible to measure like that. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Type of photography, but But as I say, I think I'm prepared to definitely concede that. And I
Mm.
think sometimes we look, and it's of the age that we look at things very scientifically. And, that's right. I mean, it's not just about sort of pulling stuff out of the air and just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there is a component to life and to food, which is actually something unknown,
Yeah.
and something that we should concede is unknown, and something that actually we should look up in the whole as opposed to as isolates.
Understood. And with that, like speaking a bit more about aging, how do you think stress and cortisol play a role with gut health and hormones?
Well, absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, you can see somebody's age on their face, can't you, sometimes by, the life they've lived, with the
Yeah.
sort of like, and especially stress, because it can cross react with proteins and cause kind of like stiffening an effect of the protein. Sort of so that you've got it's less flexible, so the skin becomes less flexible, and so actually it causes oxidation and causes all sorts of problems.
Wow.
And cortisol is a very powerful hormone, which, if as you know, if got a terrible fright, let's say your child was being squashed under a car, you can lift the car with the power of cortisol and lift the car off the child.
Wow.
So it's incredibly powerful. But too much of a good thing isn't necessarily wonderful,
Yeah.
as Mae West once said. So yeah, so basically, in its right place, stress is obviously something that you need in order to motivate yourself. You need that hormonal drive to feel motivated. Otherwise, you just lounge in bed all day.
Mm.
But it's about the right balance of it.
And do you think that women too quickly sometimes will accept hormonal symptoms as too normal? And have any point in your life have you, in terms of, oh, well,
Um, yeah, yeah. What do you mean as an excuse?
yes,
Yes, I think so. I think it's a pretty good excuse, really. Sometimes it's like
100%.
it's like I haven't got that anymore. I haven't got any hormones. Well, I have, but obviously, but yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the wonderful thing, by the way, about the M word getting through the other side, is that clarity, and sort of like, if it works well,
Yeah.
so that, because you still do have hormones, obviously.
Yeah.
You're producing estrogen through your fat cells and through your adrenal glands. So in effect, when people say that the estrogen completely stops, it doesn't stop. And that's why you should take care of your adrenal glands, because otherwise you don't have enough estrogen in the system,
Wow.
simply put. But yeah, I think though we are much more complex machines, and I think sometimes we're running in a game that isn't really geared
For us.
necessarily to our biochemistry or our biology, so that we're running, aren't we, in a 9 to 5 day still in a lot
Or
of times.
in a lot of cases more.
Yeah, a lot of cases
Yeah.
more now, because people are working from home,
Yeah.
never stopping. You're still juggling as a woman.
A lot of people balance with having children, running
Yeah.
the house.
But
and a
also
job.
getting older, you may be running parents who are, have lost the plot, demented, or, need care, and then you're running your parents, you're running older children, you're running the dog, and you're running the husband or the partner. So all of these complexities, and it tends to be that we do put ourselves last. We put everybody in front of us, for sure. And, all of that cortisol driven kind of powerhouse can cause the hormones, because you're stealing, in effect, the master hormone, which is like progesterone. You're stealing that to make adrenaline or cortisol and adrenaline or stress hormones. So you're stealing it, and you'll have an impact somewhere else, which is hormonal issues, as we said, like PCOS or endometriosis, or
Yeah.
those female.
And kind of on the flip side of that, would you say women that live like very active lives or have a lot of energy that you've seen, especially maybe within your group, Sensational at 60, what do they have in common?
Well, I think a lot of it, and a big sort of well-being huge thing is attitude.
Mm.
It's absolutely, because I think, if you have the right attitude, and then it comes back to why I got into the nutrition in the first place, which was the mindset, which is everything is well, not everything, but everything is around mindset. Even if you've got challenges, which, you can't always be well. You can't always be punching, air and, whooping.
Yeah, of course. Everyone has their days where they feel horrendous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's pretty normal. But I mean, for example, take my mum, who's 88 years
Yeah.
young, and she has osteoporosis, actually. But her mental kind of like, I don't know what you call it, just like attitude, I suppose.
Yeah,
She's
her
just-
mindset.
She's curious. She's funny. She's life and soul of the party. She's, I don't know, she's witty. She's amusing. She's traveled the world. She's got stories. All of these things. So she takes a little apartment. She lives in Italy. She takes a little apartment in this little city, and you have to go up like 4 flights to get to the place where she spends the winter.
Mm.
And at the beginning of the winter, she was like, "God, this was a mistake." By the end, she's done it as an exercise routine.
That's so good.
So that osteoporosis that might have gone, "Oh no, you know what? This is going to be a bit tricky. I don't think I'll do it."
Yeah.
Even with the pain, even with everything.
Yeah.
She's like, "No, I'm getting up those
Still.
stairs. That's going to be me. I'm not going to concede defeat on these stairs." So now she's really has done her a lot of good, so
Yeah.
she's whistling up the stairs.
So you would say mindset alongside.
Whistling up, but
Yeah.
no, mindset is so important. But again, sorry to be a bore, but it comes back to the nutrition, which
Yeah.
is, of course, things like, which are well studied, fish oils in depression, and zinc in mind, in mental health. And I'm not saying it's a cure, but I'm saying it's a foundation that if you're looking to improve your mental health, you really need to have that base nutrition in to start with, at least to give yourself a chance. Because of course life happens to us, and we have unfortunate things happen, and
Of course.
there's lots of outside stuff happening to us, and the world, and all the rest of it. But if you can just maintain that base, then you have a chance to become sensational.
What a tagline. And for any women who feel that maybe their best years are behind them, what would you say to them?
Well, what would I say to them? I would say, no, don't, I mean, well, obviously I'd say that. I think it is just, sometimes I do the exercise where if you think, let's say I'm 60, actually I'm 64 now. 64, but 74, 84, 94. So that's 30 years. Okay, let's say I'd lived to 94. Let's say, and plus that,
Yes.
whatever. But you go 30 years back. So where was I 30 years ago, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I'd given up 30 years ago, I was just becoming a nutritionist 30 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you could live with enough energy to create the next 30 years, what would you do with them? What would you do? So
I mean, you have so much time.
yes, that's a whole career, and you kindly introduced me at the beginning. That's the books. That's the traveling all around the world.
Yeah.
giving talks, and having really good fun doing it. Being a bit cheeky.
It's given you access to a whole different life, basically. And if you look back at Kate when she was working in that hotel and just super unfulfilled and not knowing, basically, like just shattered, basically, is what you said. And then now to how you are and just full of energy within just having
It's about that
nutrition.
curiosity. And I said to you, because I'm very proud of it, but everybody's like, what? But I've just finished a master's at,
Yeah.
so in anthropology of food from SOAS, which is a Russell Group university, top of the tree.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing.
No, but I mean, but you're sort of competing with obviously much younger students and, and actually, and all of the, meaning instead of going, oh no, I'm a bit too old to do a master's. And do you think I'll be able to compete with these younger people and whatever? And you're just like, well, let's have a go, let's see how it goes,
Yeah. No, it's so inspiring because I think we're always like, go, 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 go. And, you have this mindset of like, oh, if I'm not a multi-millionaire, super successful at 22 years old, then I've not made
it.
Yeah. But just to hear that, I think is really interesting, and having the base of, looking after yourself and prioritizing your nutrition as just a starter.
Yeah, you've got to turn on the nutrition, and the nutritional base and the nutritional foundation is basically the key to the magic door. And you need to grab the key and you need to turn the lock and you need to do it. And pretty much there's no excuse. You need to do it. And I don't mean to say you need to be wealthy to do that. You need to do your best with what you've got.
Yeah.
And you need to do it. No excuses, unless you don't want to be fulfilled. I know that sounds kind of quite probably stern. Blunt. But it's just like, you can do it. You can do it. But you need to have the foundation. Because if you don't have the energy, you won't have you won't have the impetus, you won't have the energy to be able to fulfill anything. And it doesn't mean to say you get it right all the time. And also, I was just thinking, like, why did I do that master's? Like, what was that about? But it's just like the curiosity can come from the energy, like, okay, well, let's examine that, and I'm absolutely curious about everything, probably too much.
Is there anything that you look back on where you're like, oh, like, I got that wrong, I shouldn't have tried that product, or I shouldn't have tried that supplement? Or do you feel like everything that you've had intake, whether it was a supplement or a certain product, you felt like that was the right decision because you heavily researched it? Just for maybe someone that,
do you know
kind
what?
of
I never
looking to
research anything.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, no, within reason, which is, I think really, and it's lazy actually, but especially as I'm a nutritional therapist, and a lot of it is about the practitioner level brands. So I think it is about going to the brands that you really, really trust. And, in a way, it shortcuts a lot of the headache. You should do, because supplements aren't all created equal. They really aren't, actually. But really, sometimes it's the price. So, you do have to pay a little bit more for good ingredients. Good supplements do cost more, and especially where they're sourced from. So sometimes the sourcing can be from places where there's heavy metals and, all of that kind of thing. So yes, there does have to be that trust in the brand, and working with really good professional brands, who you can really front face and get them to answer a lot of your questions is really important. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I feel, for someone that's maybe, right, I'm looking at going into getting some supplements, or I'm looking at buying my first protein powder, or I'm looking at a greens powder, and, you go online and it's just like overwhelming amount of brands and companies.
Yeah.
What would you look for as a nutritionist in terms of, okay, well, that makes sense or that doesn't make sense with looking for a brand? And what advice would you have for those people that are just literally starting?
Well, again, I think going to a practitioner, I know that's expensive for a lot of people. I think it's also, supplementation. I think it's slightly different with something like the Good Green Vitality, because it is a base. So it's like, it's just not just, but it can be magic a base, but it's a base. Whereas actually getting into the other supplements that might be according to need, actually. And I think what we can do is completely overdo it, where you're on absolutely just a bucket of stuff, which might even be Do you know, it's my first client, Steve, if you're out there, came with two carrier bags of stuff that he'd read online. I mean, even then, can't have been online because it was like like in 2000. Did they have the internet in 2000?
I think so.
Yeah, just about. Okay. So he just came with these two bags because he'd just read something and then he'd read something else and then he'd read something else. And then, and that is all having to be processed through your liver, not least. So,
Yeah, and before you know it, you have 50 products that you're trying to have in a daily routine. I mean, it's kind of impossible.
but also all things can add up in that. Like, actually, I think these things sometimes go in trends as well, but it was always that selenium, you shouldn't take too much selenium. It can be toxic at certain doses and all the rest of it. And so, actually, all of those can kind of add up along the line, in different products. So I think it is really about looking at, again, it's trying to, or getting a practitioner to do it, is analyze what you need. So start off, if you've got good health, so-called good health, especially if you're younger, you need the base, as we said. But beyond there, what do you need? Your system's going to work a lot better when you're younger. What symptoms do you have? So hormonal symptoms, look at the liver.
Yeah.
So, things like, as we talked about, milk thistle, NAC, or artichoke, all the bitter herbs. Love bitter herbs, like a bitter spray for digestion. And actually, that's very important. Digestive enzymes, really important. So getting the top of everything working much, much better rather than taking loads and loads of nutrients downstream, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's so important. And as we get older, and for older people, we don't digest as well, especially HCl, so hydrochloric acid. So so doing it according to need or symptoms as opposed to trend, because otherwise, especially nowadays, everybody's a hypochondriac. It's just like, oh, I've got that, definitely must have that quick. And
it's really hard when you Google like your symptoms, because you get
Google.
Yeah, you get a list of all these illnesses and it's like really, really serious, and it's like, okay, maybe not that.
But, there's nothing wrong with trying to bat for the best health you can. Absolutely. And to give yourself an unfair advantage in doing so.
Yeah.
Definitely. But, I think, again, especially in the West, comes back to that, sort of tuning out of social media, not always being driven by that.
Yeah.
Driven by your, even your, not your instinct exactly, but, just
Your gut.
Your gut. Getting the foundations right. Good food, good family, if you can. I know that's not always easy. Good sleep, walking, you don't have to.
Real basics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some basic stuff.
100%. And that's like accessible to a lot of people, going out and having a walk. I think what my next question was going to be is coming across a brand like Nuzest. How did you first find out about it? And what was your initial reasoning for trying the product?
Well, it was my friend Melissa, actually.
Okay.
My friend Melissa said, you must try Good Green Vitality. She's another nutritionist.
Okay.
And I not giving away who Melissa is, but like my husband, who is a pie eater, her husband is a pie eater. So I don't know what it is with nutritionists, but we attract a pie-eating bloke, into our lives.
Yeah.
So we thought to ourselves, well, if they're going to eat pies, maybe we could just top up their nutrition with something that's kind of like we can put in front of them and bang, job done. So yes. So she said, you got to try it.
And that's
it.
Literally from then, did you just give it to your husband and then you tried it yourself?
Oh, no. Everything is in the lab of me first.
Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Everything gets cleared through you first.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But, it's sort of like, I don't, especially actually, it's so interesting because obviously, I keep on saying it's interesting, it probably isn't. But my, it's like everybody's snoozed off. it's like
No, it's great. It's absolutely great.
So, so I think it is that, if you are into nutrition and it's been such a, and it, as I said, it was like not a cure for some disease I had, although people who are nutritional therapists have that, where literally they've done the nutritional therapy, they're sort of evangelical. Cool. That's right. They're evangelical about it because it's cured something for them. They're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But actually, so nutrition is such an important part of my life, and it's sort of is a background symphony to everything I do, definitely. But to somebody else, like my husband, it is not a background symphony.
It's not even in his
It's not even
picture.
in the playlist.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's really interesting. So for him, it's complexity. Anything to do with nutrition, even if it's lightly put, is too complex.
Yeah.
He needs it simple.
And to someone like him that maybe would look at products or supplements, or maybe wouldn't even look at products, what would you say to that person in terms of this is really beneficial into your life? For someone that's like, no, supplements, I don't
think you need somebody probably, just like, there you go. Here you go. Doesn't matter what you think.
You're going to have it anyway.
You're going to have it anyway. So that, I think it's really important because, again, whatever base you're on, whatever pies you're eating. I mean, I don't want to make light of it, but you don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think, again, nowadays as well, it is all about, especially other nutritionists who are sort of terribly, I do have that moment where it's, deliciously somebody or other, and you're thinking, well, you're 28 anyway, and you're gorgeous, so you don't need any help, frankly. So you get that sort of glamorous nutritionist who just, who looks like they're doing everything super perfectly. But you don't have to be doing it super perfectly.
Yeah, you can still enjoy your life and have a bit of alcohol, a bit of desserts.
Well, absolutely, because it goes back to my philosophy, which is it's about food is about people, and it's, it's sort of like, it's almost like if I came to your house, and I don't generally eat quite a lot of pasta and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
if I came to your house and you'd cook me pasta and whatever, I'd eat it.
Yeah.
Luckily, I'm not intolerant or allergic to wheat or whatever, but I would eat it because you've cooked it for me.
It's like that lens of community.
Total.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I go out and create communities because,
yeah,
it's really important, that bit. But as what I'm trying to say really is, if your partner is a pie eater,
slip him
a Mickey
green vitality.
Of good green vitality.
And speaking more about good green vitality with this 75 plus ingredients, would you say that, because it's quite overwhelming maybe to someone who's like, oh my gosh, like there is just so much in here. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing from your perspective?
I think it's about the synergy of how things work together. And obviously, I think Nuzest has been carefully thought about. I mean, there's lots of different, again, as I was saying, so food works together in harmony. It doesn't work together. It doesn't work separately. So I don't think it matters about how many ingredients are in there. It just matters if you feel that it works and that you maintain your health. And so again, take out the complexity of, don't worry, the stuff in there is good green vitality.
Yeah.
And actually, if you're achieving that, these will work together synergistically as food, and just, go with that.
Yeah. So a quote that you kept saying throughout this whole thing, and something that I wanted to touch on, is you're not your age, you're your energy. And I'm sure that you bring that up within your spaces as well with Sensational at 60 and the groups and community with there. Can you just go a bit more into that and what that means in terms of, like what it means to you?
Yeah, I think, well, as going back to the old story of me plonking my head in the soup at 28 years old and actually being so unfulfilled in that job. And I was in other jobs I was unfulfilled in, like a secretarial job. Only trouble was I couldn't type, and that was a bad one as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, that sort of thinking, or just grabbing the richness of life. But yeah, so at any age you can be knackered. At
Yeah.
any age you can lack energy. So at 28, I was more like the 64-year-old that people, like as the, what do you call it? Like the typical idea of a 64-year-old, I being knackered.
Yeah.
I was more like that at 28 than I am now at
Wow.
64. So then, as I say, with that, you don't have to concede to the idea of what it means to be 64 or whatever,
Yeah.
you can play under your own rules and create, don't let other people, what do you call it, judge you, not judge you, but it's just like be
Decide
yourself.
yeah.
Who you are.
Yeah.
Just create from that. Be curious. And from that, as I say, actually, it might not just be about what you get out of it. It's what you can actually, who and what you can carry with you with that gift of energy. So, I think as women, quite often, we perhaps it's changed a bit in the younger generations, but for certainly our generation, it's almost like, looking after ourselves was counted as slightly selfish. We were the last person that you should be taking care of, because we were taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
But in this or in this game, having your energy enables you, if you want to take care of everybody else, to be that linchpin, or to be the change in your family, or to be the change in your community, or to be the change in your, wherever.
Yeah.
To be that ignition of inspiration for other people that you can then take with you over the hill, and lead the charge if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you are on the sofa having a, crafty fag and a you just can't, can you?
No, but I understand what you're saying. To me, the whole thing ties together in terms of like what we've covered. Your nutrition, this is my takings. You can add to this. Your nutrition is your foundation, and basically doing what you can with what you've got. So however that looks within your life, different financial background, whether you have access to like all these different cooking appliances, all of that stuff. It's what can you do, just small things, to better help your nutrition and your energy, whether that's something as small as going for a walk, wellness side of things.
Exactly.
And that kind of ties in with all of those things that you've mentioned about gut health and enzymes and all the science, like the science behind the product of a supplement, for example, with Nuzest Good Green Vitality, starting your day with a base level of, okay, I'm doing something that helps me here.
Yeah, I think it could do more than help you, I think. I mean,
Really?
It's not just a kind of like, I don't think it's, I say benign. It's not, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, in a wholly positive way. I think actually the analogy is that health should be looked as a whole, and actually Good Green Vitality is almost that holistic whole that matches the wholeness of how you should look at your health.
Wow.
That's it. I mean, I think it is that, do you see what I mean? It's almost like we can see health in different constituent parts, and I think this is the trouble with media trends nowadays. It's just like, take, I don't know, NAD, get your energy, do this, do that, do this. And it's just too much constituent parts. And actually interesting, because actually it's the difference between sometimes how we look at science. We're looking down a microscope and analyzing things in different component parts which aren't connected to the whole.
Yeah.
Whereas we need to look at health much more connected to the whole, i.e. our communities, our food, where we get our food, our farmers, shout out to the farmers, our farmers, all of the people that make it possible that we can eat, live and thrive, rather than the tiny components that might be augmenting us personally, but aren't doing anything else for our communities and the wider idea of health
Yeah, absolutely.
outside ourselves, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And that actually leads me to my final question for you, which is, if you were to have a message or have a conversation with your younger self about health, nutrition, life, all of that encompassing, what would you say?
Well, my younger self, pre 28, because actually I should have said as well that I was very depressed in all of this as well. It wasn't just a benign energy thing, like I was a bit sort of knackered. It was also that I was incredibly low. I thought literally, I remember being 21 and thinking that I really do remember thinking, well, I've blown it now, completely blown it. I've just messed up, and all the rest of it. So I think it is just, my younger self, I would just say, you know, I would say some nutritionist, but put food at the foundation of everything you do. Watch what you can do with that gift, and it doesn't have to be that you lead the troops over the hill. It doesn't have to be anything big, but it does mean that you then find, I think, happiness. You just find everything from there. You find that ability to be able to get your mind to work kind of properly, and just to be a happy, productive human that is having a blast. And I would never have seen that in my 21-year-old self or 28-year-old self. I would have thought kind of like, it's pretty much game over.
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong job, wrong career. I'm worried about everything. So it's just like live life beautifully, live life to the full, live life in the whole. Don't worry too much about yourself and, in the individual components of nutrition in a way. Look at the whole and thrive.
Amazing. Kate, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I really appreciate you being here.
It's been fabulous.